Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah, I was talking with Nathan just before the broadcast started. We get a couple minutes together between 9 o'clock and 9:07 when the broadcast goes live. And I was telling him that about some of the locals here. And I was telling him that when our son decided he wanted to try school for the first time, he wanted to go to high school. And he went to the local high school. And the teachers were really curious about the Finelli family. And they asked him every different way they could think of to figure out what the Finelli family does. We moved here from Virginia to Missouri. And so they'd say, "So what does your dad do?" And our son would always answer the same way: "We don't talk about it." Oh, gosh, did that start the rumors flying? And it's working great because they're so concerned about us here that our home has not been burglarized. Yeah, it works pretty well. So they think what they want, and it's working really well. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. You dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And we are on what's considered a tape delay all over the country. AM, FM, satellite, YouTube. We're on Republic Broadcasting as well. The Republic Broadcasting and John Stadtmiller's organization picks up USA Prepares and rebroadcasts it the next day. Thank you very much, Republic Broadcasting and John Stadtmiller. Nathan's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince Finelli. How are you doing this morning?
Well, I was very well. I was telling Nathan, our engineer, about hay. I was saying that we've been baling hay, helping our neighbors, and they're in a little bit of a trouble because, well, they can't seem to find people who are willing to help them. And farmers around here are getting older, and it's getting tougher for them to get around and to do the things they used to do even 2 years ago. So we've been helping our neighbors, and I noticed this phenomenon about hay, and I'd like to share this with you and see if it's happening to you. Normally, I've been baling hay for 25 years, actually over 25. And the way it typically used to work is we would, it was a multi-step process. We would cut the hay with a hay mower. And this is a mower that has these 2, 3, 4 inch long blades. They spin really high RPM. And they would cut the hay, the grass, such that it would just fall down. It wouldn't chop it up. It would keep it intact and it would just fall down. As the mower went forward, the grass blades would fall behind the mower. And would just lie there. The sun would bake it, and 2, 3 days later, we would rake it with a rake that we'd pull behind a tractor and rake it into what's called wind rows. And then we would follow that with a baler and bale it into these round bales that are about 1,000 pounds each. So that's the process. And then we'd pick the bales up with a front-end loader on a tractor and put them on a trailer, and then move them to where we would store them. Lately, the sun is so strong that farmers in our neck of the woods right now are cutting the hay in the morning, raking it and baling it in the late afternoon. That's how strong the sun is. What used to take 2 or 3 days to dry the grass is now accomplished in less than 1 day. And I was wondering if you are finding the heat is strong, the ultraviolet rays are so strong that you have to get out of the sun, because here, by noon, the sun is so intense that we can't work outside, literally. You cannot stand being outside in the sun's rays in the direct rays for more than a few minutes. And I'm wondering if you're seeing and experiencing that, Rich Scheben, in Montana.
Absolutely. It's torturous hot this summer, and we're going to be in the 90s for who knows how long. There's no low-pressure systems in the forecast. We haven't had a drop of rain in a month. And I just filed a petition with the governor's office to eliminate the months of July and August and have 3 months of September so we can have extra bow season and cooler temperatures and more precip. And I CC'd it to God, and I haven't gotten a response yet, but I would love to eliminate all summer months because it is so flippin' hot here. And obviously, it's tongue-to-cheek here, but I think that there's definitely something going on. Fires are roaring, even as far north as British Columbia and Alberta right now. British Columbia is burning down, and a lot of the west in California, as we all know, is as well. We have fires in Montana, but to have the fires so intense that that BC is having is almost unprecedented. So something's definitely going on, but when you look at all the hundreds of patents that even the Rothschilds and Monsantos now own regarding weather and weather manipulation, you got to say something's going on. And I think his name is Dane Wigington. I think we've emailed back a couple times. He gives a lot of presentations on geoengineering, and I think his website is geoengineeringwatch.org, if I'm not mistaken. But you can look up Dane Wigington. He's got some really good information on his websites, and he gives talks all around the nation. What's going on is quite serious, and we need to all be aware of this. And for us little people, there's not much we can do except read research and share information. Vince?
I don't know if you know this or not, Rich Scheben, but Dane Wigington is one of our senior instructors here at USA Prepares.
Oh.
And, he's a really, really good guy. He has given presentations at our meetups. He's been on the air with us many times, and he sent me materials about geoengineeringwatch.org. And let me tell you how he got started. He generates his electricity the same way you do and I do, with the sun. And a few years ago, he noticed that he's getting less and less and less electricity. So, what are the thoughts? Well, maybe the solar panels are becoming weaker and they're just not delivering the same number of amps that they used to. Maybe that's the problem. And then he figured it out. The atmosphere is occluding the solar rays so that he was not receiving on his solar panels the full strength of the sun that he used to. So he started investigating what happened. He looked up, he looked down, he saw all these chemical trails in the sky, and he started speaking out about it. And that's how he got started, because he could scientifically measure the amount of amps that he used to get versus the amount of amps he was getting. And it was about a 50% difference, a massive difference. And if you, Rich Scheben, or I, have a 50% reduction in the amount of solar energy we are generating, that's a huge difference. It's the difference between being able to get by and not being able to get by, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the Dane Wigington story as I know it. And Dane would call me up, he uses the word amigo, and he'd say, "Hey, amigo, just call to see if you're okay. Just want to make sure you're still alive." And he was very concerned about us here at USA Prepares, because he thought that the message that we are delivering is one that not everybody likes. I'm talking about those dangerous people with guns and bazookas and artillery and howitzers and tanks and death rays and those kinds of devices. He was very concerned, and assassinations. Those are the people that who commit assassinations that he was kind of worried about. So yeah, he's a really, really, really good guy. He used to work for Bechtel. Yep. So class, if you want to hear some of Dane Wigington's information, you can go to YouTube, and you can type in USA Prepares, USA Prepares, and you can type in Dane, D-A-N-E, Wigington, W-I-G-I-N-G-T-O-N. Or if you'd like to go to USA Prepares and click on the Instructors tab, you'll find him there, and it'll take you right to his website, GeoEngineeringWatch.org. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to give him a call today, probably tonight, because he's on the West Coast, and chat with him and get him on the air again with us. But he has been instrumental in exposing the corruption, the evil, the death that's being unleashed on our planet by these evil people. And I mentioned, since we're on this topic, I mentioned on the air to the ladies who are married to the pilots, the men who are pilots, and I'm not saying all of them are men, but most of them are probably men, that their pilot husbands are flying in the wake of this geoengineering, pollution. They're flying in the wake of it, and they're breathing it as well as we're breathing it, because they're flying in the wake of the planes that are in front of them and alongside them. So if they wanted to have defective children, if they wanted to have birth defects, just keep it up. Keep it up, and they'll probably end up with a better chance of having a defective child, one that will be a burden on everybody for the child's life or the parent's life. So if they're interested in having defective children, birth defects, just let their husbands keep flying. Keep flying. Now, if they don't like the idea of having defective children, then make their husbands sleep on the couch. Okay? And maybe their husbands will get the hint that this is so dangerous that the wives do not want to have defective children in their family. And so the husbands ought to get out of the business of polluting the planet. That's what we said. And we just said it again, right here on USA Prepares. And I stand by it. Rich Scheben's with us. And when we come back, I've got a little story I'd like to share with you about a call that I received, Rich, over the weekend.
Okay.
Very interesting call. It's about Steeler ships. Steeler ships with an S. We'll be right back. So, I'm a little bit frosty, Rich Scheben. I'll tell you why. So I got a call over the weekend from one of our instructors. And he was telling me that they have a family vehicle. It's a Suburban, Chevrolet Suburban. And it was dripping some oil. And so our instructor's wife took the vehicle to the dealership, or the Steelership with an S. And the service advisor, who was a woman, advised that, this is something that you really need to take care of. There's this leak from the Chevrolet Hydroboost, Hydroboost, needed to be fixed. And they would be willing to do it over the weekend on a Saturday. They'd be able to accomplish this for a fee of $1,300, $1,300. So our instructor called me and said, what do I think? I said, well, I've never replaced one. Let me look it up. So I looked it up right then and there while he was on the phone. I was in the kitchen at the farmhouse at the time. And I said, well, I found the part. We can get it at the local auto parts shop for $240 rebuilt. It takes 4 bolts to put it in on the back, 2 bolts on the front. Looks like a 1-hour job. You can bring it over and we'll do it. So I called the auto parts store. They said there are 2 models, the Chevy 1500 and the 2500. They had one of them in stock. The next one they could have by 1:30 in the afternoon the following day on Sunday. So, okay, I'll let you know. And I decided to look it up a little bit more, and I found out that you could rebuild this thing. It only has 1 seal in it, and the seal is available for $7. 7, S-E-V-E-N. 7. Less than 10. So I talked to our instructor, and I said, okay, so here's the deal. $240 would be if it's a 1500. A little less than that, $211 or so if it's a 2500 series Suburban. $7 for the part if you and I want to rebuild it. I said, I vote for rebuilding it. We'll have the part next weekend, by next weekend, and we'll just do it right here. It'll be a great learning experience. I've never done it before, but I've rebuilt hydraulic cylinders, master cylinders. And I said, in the 70s when I was selling auto parts at the auto parts store, after school high school days, the mechanics would buy they would call them the rubber cups to rebuild wheel cylinders and master cylinders for braking systems. And, the parts were like 29 cents back then, literally. And I said they wouldn't spend the $3 or $4 or $5 to buy a rebuilt master cylinder or a new one for $8 or $10. They would rebuild them for 29 cents. I said, I don't think we're going to have any trouble doing this at all. I sent him a YouTube video on how to do it. And he called me back and he said, $7 sounds good, let's do it. So we're going to rebuild this part, the Hydroboost. Now, what is it? It's a brake part. It provides additional braking pressure when you step on the brake pedal. Now, what the dealership or the stealership told them was, this woman who was there, that it affects the vacuum system. There is no vacuum line to this. None. Now, here are the 2 points I want to make. One, $1,300 for a $7 part. And I figure if it takes an hour to do it, we can probably get it done in 2 or 3 hours, okay? Literally. Never having done it before. 2 or 3 hours. For sure. And the woman who is the service advisor has no business being there. She's telling the customer that it affects the vacuum system. That'd be really dangerous if it affects the vacuum system, right? That's what she's hinting at. There's no connection to the vacuum system. None. So here we have people advising us about our car, and sometimes the customer is no less than a service advisor, and the service advisor has no business being in that job. It's an outrage. Now, I'm not saying all women don't know about cars, because that's not the case. Because we have a USA Prepares instructor right here on this broadcast. Her name is Pam Oakes. She's an author. She has a multi-bay service center in Florida. She's the boss. She's been a mechanic for years and years and years and years. Studied under her father. Really knows a lot about cars and how to turn wrenches. So I'm not saying that women don't know. I'm just saying this woman that I'm talking about as a service advisor ought to be recalled. Rich, when we come back, I'd love to hear your comments on what I just said. Rich Shealy, offgridmontana.com. Rich Shealy's with us. So, Rich, I was talking about this outrageously overpriced part and the repair. And, the service advisors, who I don't think know very much, at least that's been my experience, giving out wrong information time after time after time. And it's probably a universal situation where the service advisors really are not those dyed-in-the-wool mechanics, where they take I don't know a dealership that takes a seasoned mechanic, a guy who's been turning wrenches or gal who's been turning wrenches for, 20 years, and has seen a lot of the repairs of cars and knows how to work on them, and then puts that person in the position of advising customers as to what they should do. I don't see that. I just see people who have no clue what they're doing, being service advisors. Do you have a comment on that?
I absolutely do. And you know me, I always like to drag in Economics 101 for a lot of my answers. And I think it's a lot more than just incompetence. I think it's an industry gold-digging, desperation, deflationary spiral that we're in. You look at, we're in $1 trillion plus of debt in auto loans and school loans and credit card loans, and the defaults are mounting up. If you look at how much fewer new sales that we have, and the new and used inventory of automobiles shooting through the moon. You look at, I remember reading an article just a few months ago where subprime auto lenders skipped income verification on 92% of the loans. I mean, that's just, as you know, we're heading into another housing mortgage crisis and subprime mortgage issue there too. So the desperation of dealerships, of everybody just trying to bring up their numbers so the executives can raise their faulty, false, phony stock prices and then issue bonds to the people and the pensions who are desperate for yields so they can sell their stock options. I mean the CEOs and executives. That's the phony corporate situation we're running in today. And it would be amiss if I did not mention the fact that we've been running, and I say we, the U.S., has been running a trade deficit since about 1973. In other words, we've been buying more stuff from foreign countries than we sell. In fact, it's been growing pretty much year after year for the most part, and we're over $500 billion just in 2016 alone. So, and this is one of the reasons why we have so much, I believe, foreign ownership of American property, land, ports, equities. We're in a consumption bubble. We're in a Trojan horse bubble. We have robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence taking millions of jobs. And we are in a very desperate situation. And this is not just an American situation. This is a worldwide deflationary spiral with stagflationary complications. So when you look at what options people have, there's very few, and that's why they're very desperate. And you're right. Years ago, I remember those salespeople at the service industry. They had mechanic background, and now I think they're hiring everybody they can because there's probably a very high attrition rate, and it's tough to keep people. And it's a spiral just heading south, and that this is one of the reasons why you and I talk as much as possible about self-sufficiency. Now, I don't have any mechanical ability, but again, I make my own energy, grow my own produce, hunt my own meat or raise it, can everything, live with an Amish-made wood-cook stove. A lot of the things that we do is in the self-sufficiency preparedness arena. And if any of you out there have the ability to work on some of these things, I think it's a great time to learn if you have a knack or a certain skill set to really hone those skills, because if this economy collapses, which I think it will, I think we could be in a barter situation for at least a bit. And this, I think being a mechanic would be an excellent skill, Vince.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I've got George in New Hampshire. He's calling in, but I have a very quick question to ask of you. It's just kind of a yes or no. Do you change your own oil in your truck?
One we do, one no, because it's a 2011. Okay. I bought it new, so I just I take it to the dealership so they can look at a bunch of other stuff, and it's all computerized, and yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, when during this broadcast, I'm going to do a 5-minute or less piece on the way Vinny changes his oil. Okay, why he does it the way he does. And so we're going to do a mechanics lesson, Mechanics 101, changing your oil during this broadcast. Why I do it the way I do it, and why you should consider doing it the same way I do it. George in New Hampshire, such a treat to have you on the air and hear you. Thank you for calling.
It's very nice to hear you too, and Rick. I just wanted to say one thing fast, is that I noticed increasingly, because so many people are so disconnected from the mechanics of the vehicle as they're driving, and they rely on other people in industries who run the gambit from very decent and honest all the way down to unscrupulous and terribly dishonest, which is repetitious, but it's deserved in some cases. And I know, Rick, Vin, is that when in the old, not that long ago, when we were growing up, if somebody replaced the starter, a mechanic replaced the starter or an alternator from a car, and in those days, it was much more reasonable. And these days, it's much more expensive. Well, in terms of the parts, especially, what happens is that how we would get a reimbursement because more often than not they'd get a rebuild part, and they'd trade in your old alternator, your old starter, for a new rebuilt one, and you'd save enough. And at the same time, they give you a reimbursement and a credit that would knock some money off the price, because they'd take yours and you'd rebuild, and they would rebuild yours and sell it to the next person, totally honest, right, and recycling. Well, the thing is, I have found for some years now, it happened once to me, but I said it straight right away, because a lot of times the mechanics are pocketing that reimbursement, charging you the full price for the rebuilt unit. And as I tell people, I said, look that alternator and that starter came from your car, which you own and you paid for, which means that alternator and starter that came out of your car is your property. Now, if you want to sell it, when he brings it into the place for the rebuild place, or the parts guy picks it up and brings it there, they get an automatic. It could be could be 25, 35, 45, 55, and on up, even into the hundreds in some cases. So I just want people to know, and like you said, you explained how for a simple seal you could rebuild something that they might chuck out. I'm just saying is that a lot of people don't realize they're supposed to get a reimbursement on the price of the rebuilt alternate and the rebuilt starter. What do you think?
Well, if you're asking me, I totally agree with what you're saying. And there's one other point to this. If you look at some of the invoices that your friends might have gotten having their car serviced, you'll see the cost of the part, you'll see the labor charge, and then down toward the bottom, you'll see something called a disposal fee. So they charge you for the spray lubricant. You know, if they have to loosen some bolts, they spray a little bit of lubricant on there. They charge you maybe $2 to $4 for that spray. Now the whole can costs like $1.67, right? So they charge you, for this just a little 3, 4, 5 drops of spray lubricant. They charge you a couple dollars for that, and then they charge you a disposal fee for that part that they say they're going to throw away, that they are probably going to rebuild. Now, what would a dealer do with this Hydroboost? Well, it's clear to me that what they would do is they would say to their mechanics off time, I'll tell you what, Joe, look, we've got these 7 Hydroboosts that they're in the bin over there. I want you to rebuild them. It'll take you 20 minutes apiece to do them at the most. That's include repainting them so they look, like they've been rebuilt. So what we'll do is here's the $7 seal, rebuild them in your off time. And then they'll sell them as rebuilt ones at the dealership for probably 2 times what the auto parts store would sell them at. So probably like close to $500 a piece for the $7 seal. Now, why would they do that? Because a lot of the GM vehicles, the trucks have them, and they leak. Now, generally, it's just a seep, and it drips, and people go, this is pretty bad, maybe I ought to fix this. Well, yeah, I think they should fix it. I agree. However, it probably does not indicate a catastrophic failure immediately. So they probably have a little bit of time to fix it. I'm not saying ignore it, class. I'm saying check it out, pay attention to it. But I'm also saying that the dealerships are ripping us off. And I'm in total agreement with you, George.
And I'll just say 2 other quick things, and I don't mean to cut any on Rick's time. I'll just say that one is, it would pay to get one of these computer code readers. You can get them for like under $50, and you can put it underneath the dash. It takes maybe like a minute or something just to hook it up, and you can see what the check engine light means. And also, always remember, if you see a check engine light and you recently filled up the gas tank, or you let a teenager borrow the car and fill up the gas tank, they may not have put the gas cap on properly. And to not have to pay an exorbitant amount to find that out, just go and check the gas cap. I learned that the hard way many years ago. All right, take care, and
George,
as always, good talking to both of you.
Before you go, I just want to put an exclamation point on what George just said. He's absolutely right. Now, I wanted to buy some used wheels for my old Mercedes, 2000 model Mercedes. And the wheels were about, at the least I could find them, $100 a piece. And I wanted them because I wanted more rubber between the road and the wheel. And I don't like these new 45 series tires because you hit a pothole or you hit a rock on the dirt road we live on and they just destroy the tires. So I wanted more cushion. But in order to do that, I had to buy wheels for this used Mercedes, 17 years old. The wheels were, at the least I could find them, $100 a piece. And then I had to buy new tires. So we're looking at, I don't know, by the time I'm done, about $800. Well, I found an entire Mercedes for $2,200 more than that, with the wheels I was looking for, and almost brand new tires. And it was a diesel. And it was almost perfect, but it had a check engine light. So what did I do? I bought that device that George was talking about on eBay for about $25 or $30. And I checked out the vehicle. I knew what the code was. I knew what was wrong with it. And it's a great thing to have. And I use it for all our vehicles now. So it's a OBD2, OBD, the Roman numeral 2. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com, offgridmontana.com. And Rich travels and speaks with groups, teaching them about self-sufficiency and taking control of their own lives and destiny. Rich, what do you have on the list for today that you'd like to share?
Well, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, Vince, but I'm just going to extend the conversation and keep it in a similar context of what you talked about regarding that person at the dealership, and and just like you, my disclaimer is that I don't think it should have anything to do with her being a female. I think she's being put under a lot of corporate pressure to make things get out of the red and into the black and have more profits. So I think they're being told to do this because of the statistics I shared with you and your listeners earlier. But what we've done is, with group identity politics, we've lowered the bars of standards and expectations and created a different set of rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. And when you reward mediocrity, whether it be because of group identity politics or corporations getting so greedy that they're trying to soak every penny from the people, you lower the bars of standards so bad that you destroy America from within. And ingenuity, productivity, innovation, everything that built our country is gone. And it's only available for the very few elite at the very top. And that's part of this fascist system that we have. And I think a lot of people, I know I mentioned this on the air semi-often, I think it's worth mentioning again, Vince. Fascism is when the big corporate oligarchies have created an alliance with big government, and they're protected by the system, by the courts, by the judges, by the attorneys. And keep in mind, we have more attorneys in this country than the whole world combined. You would think that the little people would have protection under the law, but we don't. It all depends on what group you are. Aristocracy, skin pigmentation, gender, sexual orientation, ideology, philosophy, religion. That's how the powers that be have separated us. You can just look at Bezos from Amazon. He gets like $1.50 from the taxpayers from each box shipped. Carlos Slim, who owns the New York Times, I believe he's not even an American citizen. He's a Mexican citizen. Even though he writes about America and tells us how we should live all the time, he made a fortune on Obama phones. I try to mention this pretty often. Nestle, they basically paid a $500 permit and stole 27 million gallons of water from California. Now look at all the people, all the ranches who have lost their farms, and they can't dig a well for their home, and they had to leave, and they had to go bankrupt. But yet all these big corporate oligarchies are protected by the courts and protected by big government. I have article after article after article. Here's U.S. media blackout. Italian court rules vaccines cause autism. This was a GlaxoSmithKline product. Of course, it never hit the airwaves here in America on the mainstream media because they're protected. Pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline accidentally releases 45 liters of concentrated live polio virus in the environment in Belgium. I got article after article after article. Basically, if you are big enough and have enough money, you are in the club. And that's what fascism is, folks. We have a situation where the little people, and that means the bottom 93%, doesn't have protection under the law. We have no legal rights, and we have no restitution unless somebody in the bottom 93%, because of group identity politics and political correctness, can sue somebody else because they don't have as much victim group or protectionist group status. This is degrading, this is disrespectful, and this insults the work ethic, ability, and intelligence of everybody that's put into a group, and we need to fight against that. Vince?
Yeah, that's what we do here at USA Prepares. That's who we are. We're a bunch of activists. Yep. And when we come back, Rich, I'd like to address something you said. You're talking about water wells. Now, let's talk about why wells go dry. I'll talk about why they go dry, and we'll explain that. And I'll teach a little bit on how to change your oil the way Vinny does. And we've got a lot more after that. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Sheben's with us. Rich, We mentioned water wells during hour number one, and people have noticed that a water well goes dry. And I want to talk about why for a second. You talked about a large corporation for $5 got a permit and got a lot of water for free. Well, the water comes from the ground, right? Most of the time. Here's what happens. It takes a long time for those aquifers to refill. Thousands of years. And as we pull more and more water out of the ground, we're pulling it out faster a lot of times than it's replaced. So the water table keeps going down, 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 down. Okay? And so let's say you drill a well and it's 100 feet down, and you start out with 20 feet of head in the well. So you've got 100 feet of pipe. The well is 100 feet deep. You've got 80 feet of pipe, and then the water level goes below the pipe or the pump. And now you can't pump out any water because the water level has fallen. Why is that? Because people are pulling water out of the aquifer faster than it's being replenished. So does this really happen? Sure. Sure, it happened to family members on the East Coast years and years ago. And first the neighbor would have to put in a new well, and you see the well drilling truck there, and you go, wow, got to put in a new well. Then another neighbor, same thing. And pretty soon it's us, right? Why is that? Well, when they drill the wells, they if you're in a neighborhood, well, the well drillers know about how deep they need to go, because the other guy next door they know what his depth is, and yours is going to be about the same because you're going to hit the same aquifer. Well, you're all pulling out of the same aquifer, and eventually the water level goes down. So that explains why when you have a well drilled, the new one is deeper than the old one, because you have to go deeper because all of your neighbors and friends are taking the water out of the same aquifer that you are. Yeah, that's what happens. So any comments on that, Rich, before we get into oil changes?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I dug a 250-foot well here where I live in northwest Montana, and my static water is only 40 feet, so I made sure I went down deep enough. So if you're going to do it right the first time and spend a few extra bucks and dig it deeper. You're going to get less contamination in the first place. And you might have heard of this lady. I've been on her show and been a few years ago and hosted a few shows and had her on. StopTheCrime.net, Deborah Tavares. She talks about water wars and smart meters, and she has a documentary called Iron Mountain Report, basically talking about how the elite's working for corporate structure and big government to privatize everything, and that's why there's so many big water and land grabs. And she makes it very clear how the city folks are trying to divide us, city and rural, and say there's too many straws in the pond. So it's she's very articulate about this, and she's done a lot of research, so she would be someone I would recommend if you wanted to further this conversation on water wells. Vince?
Sure. She's one of our instructors, Deborah Tavares, stopthecrime.net.
Why am I not surprised?
Well, Rich, she is a dynamo, absolute dynamo.
Very smart.
I believe, she was on the Rents Radio Network, and I think I don't know if she's still there, but she's fabulous and has been on the air with us many, many times. So, Deborah Tavares, stopthecrime.net. Okay, let's talk about Vinny's way of changing the engine oil in an automobile or light truck. And this is contrary to what most people will recommend. This is contrary to what, if you watch some of the YouTube videos, they'll tell you, don't do this. Do not do this. Now, I'm going to tell you that right on the outset that you can get burned doing this, okay? And you have to be really careful doing this. And because of the oil being hot, it's not recommended that you do this. So I'm going to tell you, don't do this. But this is what I do, okay? Here we go. So when I am going to change my oil today, for example, I will have everything ready for when I come back from a trip. And I don't change the oil when it's cold. I change the oil when it's hot. And the reason that I change my oil when it's hot is I want the contaminants in suspension. Okay? So let's say I'm going to Springfield, Missouri, a 1-hour trip each way. I'll have everything ready for when I come back. I'll have the oil drain pan. I'll have the oil filter, the drain plug wrench, the oil filter wrench, everything I need ready to go for when I come back. And I want to make sure that my vehicle is level. I'm going to do this where it's level, and I'm going to do it where it's comfortable for me. So if I have a driveway or a concrete pad, I'm going to sweep that off so that it's ready to go for when I come back, because I don't want to lie down in rocks and dirt and filth and leaves. So everything's ready. I come back. I race in, change my clothes, and put on my farmer's uniform. Okay, so I've got my blue jeans on. I've got a long sleeve shirt. I have my latex or my vinyl gloves, and my wrench is all ready. Everything's ready, and I put that under the vehicle and pull the drain plug out, drain it, and I will let that oil drain overnight, and I drain it when the oil's warm. Why? Because the suspension, the particles, the contaminants, the dirt, the grit, the metal, all those abrasion-causing particles are in suspension in the oil. And I want them to be suspended and drain right out. And then I will let the oil drain overnight. Now, has that ever done it at a dealership? No. Do they get all the old oil out? No. Do those quick lube places get all the old oil out? No. You won't believe how it'll keep dripping in the morning after you've pulled the plug the night before. It'll keep dripping very slowly, but there's more oil that's in there that'll come out. Okay. Then what I do is I will wash off the drain plug when I'm ready to put it back in. And I'll wash it off with one of two things. Either a spray lubricant, and SuperTech brand is available at the Chinese factory outlets, less than $2. And I'll just lightly spray that to get any dirt that might be on the drain plug. Because the last thing I want to do is put more dirt back into the engine than was already there. Or if I think that I'm going to need a silicone gasket material to make sure the seal is really good, I will use carburetor cleaner and clean off that drain plug with that. When it's dry, I'll blow it off with a compressor or compressed air. Make sure it's dry. You can wipe it off. Make sure there's no lint on it, on the drain plug, and then put a very small amount of RTV. And I use either the orange or the black RTV. Put that on there. Make sure that I remove all the oil from the drain plug threads and the drain plug sealing area on the oil pan and the drain plug. Put that in, and I'm going to let that set for 30 minutes before I add oil. Now, I've already taken the oil filter off. I take that off right after most of the oil comes out from the drain plug. And I'll let that drain for overnight as well. Now, depending on if I think it's dusty, I may just loosen that oil filter a few threads so that the oil will come out of the oil filter and drain into the drain pan and still protect the mating housing of the oil filter, so dirt from airborne dirt doesn't get on the mating area where the oil filter is going to screw in. Then what I'll do is when I put the oil filter back in, after all the old oil is drained out, I will refill the new oil filter with fresh engine oil and lubricate the gasket. Now, why do I do that? Because when I start the vehicle, the oil filter, it doesn't have any oil in it, so the oil pump has to pump oil from the oil pan through the oil pump into the oil filter and then throughout the rest of the engine. Now, I've already drained the oil out of the engine, so most of the galleries are empty. No oil in them. So the last thing I want to do is let this process take longer than needed. And typically, from what I've read many decades ago, when you start your engine without filling the oil filter with fresh oil, you're going to do about 10,000 miles worth of wear on your engine right then and there by changing your oil. So the last thing I want to do is have that happen. So I fill up my oil filter with fresh engine oil. Now, if the oil filter is upside down, you can easily do that. If the oil filter is sideways, you can only fill it about 40% full. Okay? That's what I do. Then, when I refill it with fresh oil, I refill it all except for about a quart. So if it takes 5 quarts, I put 4 in. And then I'll start the engine and check the engine oil level and make sure that it's right. And then I'll add that last quart. So you can do that as well. And the trick really is to let it drain overnight and get all of those contaminants out. Now, what oil do I recommend? Well, I use synthetic oil. Now, on our European vehicles, I use 0W40 Mobile Full Synthetic, 0W40, the European formula. It has better additive package than all the other mobile born engine oil products that I can think of. Miles recommends it. I recommend it. It's the way to go for gasoline engines. Now, for our diesel engines, I like a full synthetic diesel engine oil, unless I have oil leaks. Now, if you have an engine oil leak and you put synthetic oil in it, it's going to leak more. If you use regular conventional oil and you switch to synthetic oil and you had an oil leak, your little leak is going to become a bigger leak, in my opinion. So you might not want to do that. But if you want the best miles per gallon, I use full synthetic oil. And I use Rotella, full synthetic, for the diesels. And I use Mobil 1 for the gasoline engines. Now, if I have some older engines and I'm willing to save some money, I might use Supertech full synthetic. That's a Walmart oil, and I've done some research on it. I don't know who makes it, but I have not seen a single person on the internet say, don't use it. Everybody says it works great. So that's Supertech. And so that's what I use. I use 5W30 in gasoline engines. And I use it in our small equipment engines too, like air-cooled lawnmowers, that kind of thing. And it seems to work just fine there as well. So that's my thought on changing engine oil. That's how I do it. But I'm going to say don't do it that way because you could burn yourself. And I don't want to be responsible for you burning yourself. That's why everybody on the internet says change your engine oil when it's cold. But for the engine, it's the wrong way to do it. But in terms of safety, yeah, it's probably the right way. We'll be right back with Rich Sheep, offgridmontana.com. Sheep's with us. Rich, any comments about Vinny's way of changing the engine oil?
No, I think it's a good one. But the reason why I take mine to the dealership is because it costs only $36. And every time I go there, there's something different I need to do as well. For example, I had a new windshield put on last time I changed the oil. Mm-hmm. So there's always little things, and they might test little things and look at little things, or check my air, my tires, little things that I know we can do, but it's so, it's not real costly unless you have a big issue like you mentioned earlier. So I just find it easier with a newer vehicle, even though it is 2011, it's 7 years old now, to have it checked with the computer situation. I know that's the wrong answer because we need to be more self-sufficient, but like I always tell everybody, I don't drill for my own oil and refine my own gasoline. There's certain things that I do, and certain things that I don't.
Yeah, and so, class, if you do decide that you want to get one of these code readers, you can, and for $30 or less, you can get one on the internet. And I bought one. Why? Because these darn codes keep showing up. Check engine on all of our vehicles, and it could be for all kinds of reasons. Now, I could bring it to AutoZone. I could bring it to Advance Auto. I could bring it to O'Reilly, and they'll check them for free. They absolutely will. And, well, for $30, I can have one with me. So let's say I'm going to go on a trip. I'm bringing the code reader with me. I am. Because when that check engine light comes on, I want to know what happened. I want to know, is it something I really need to worry about? Or is it something that it's just a warning and it's no big deal? And that code reader will tell me that. So OBD, the Roman numeral 2, is the one that fits a lot of vehicles. But what it will not do is it will not do some of the advanced computer resetting of, let's say, a brake system. It can tell you what's wrong, but it will not reset it. And I found out a way to reset my brake system. And by the way, there are a couple things you can do to reset some of these codes. One is you can disconnect the battery. Disconnect the negative terminal of your battery and leave it disconnected for a half an hour and then reconnect it. And a lot of times that will reset the codes right there. Or if there's an error, it will reset the error. And you'll be good to go. I had a code that said my catalytic converter wasn't working properly. Now, I talked with Scotty Kilmer, and he said, don't do this, because the government doesn't like it if you do this. So don't put lacquer thinner in your gas tank. Don't do that. Especially don't put a gallon of lacquer thinner in half a gas tank, because it'll clean out your catalytic converter. So don't do that. It works great. It really works great. And I talked to some of our other instructors who have done the same thing, and they said, yeah, it works great. So Scotty Kilmer said that he was told not to say that on the air. So there you have it, lacquer thinner. And it worked fine. So, proceed at your own risk if you're going to do any of these things. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Rich Scheben, there's something that really, really frosted me. And this cop in Minneapolis executed a dog. So what happened was the teenager of the household comes home, types in the code on the alarm system, mistypes it, enters the wrong code. The police show up, and the dog's wagging his tail, and this thug cop shoots the dog, kills him, right on camera. We got the video. Dog's wagging his tail. Now, my dog, Thomas Jefferson, or some of the other dogs, might walk up to someone and who just arrives on our property unannounced and wants to say hello. I got to tell you, I think if someone goes to shoot one of our dogs, there's going to be a gunfight right here on the farm. I would treat that as a threat to our entire family. So this cop shoots and kills this dog right then and there. Why? Because someone enters the wrong code on an alarm system, and the cop feels he's threatened by this wagging tail dog, a little dog. Unbelievable. Cop shoots 2 dogs, murders them. And what do you do with someone like that? You put them on administrative leave? Oh, no, I don't think so. I think you handcuff them. You handcuff them the way they handcuff us, and you drag them into the back of a pickup truck, and you haul them for trial. But first they go to jail, and they get a chance to post $1 million bond for murder. I'm outraged. I'm absolutely furious. Rich Scheben's with us. So, Rich, here are the headlines. dailymail.co.uk. I dispatched both of them. Police body camera video shows Minneapolis cop shooting 2 emotional support dogs, then apologizing to their sobbing teenage owner. Minneapolis officer Michael Mays was investigating reports of a burglary at Jennifer LeMay's home. But when he sees the 2 Staffordshire terriers approach him, he draws his gun and shoots them. CCTV shows the animals writhing on the ground before fleeing in terror. Newly released body cam footage shows the shooting from the Mays point of view. In it, Chirac, the dog, is seen wagging its tail before getting shot. Video shows the 18-year-old Courtney Livingston sobbing and telling Mays that she has blood all over the house. Mrs. LeMays, was left to pay thousands of dollars of veterinarian bills. Another Minneapolis police officer shot and killed yoga instructor Justin, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, after she called 911 on July 5th. But here's what happened. So it says that the cop, this is from the cop's vantage point. In the video, the cop points his service weapon at Chirac, who comes running toward him but stops short. The dog appears to be calmly pacing around for a few seconds on the grass with his tail slightly wagging, but before the officer fires his gun, striking the dog in the face. Rocco, another dog, then makes a dash toward the officer. Obviously, this dog is in support of the other dog, just got shot. Gets shot about 2 to 3 seconds later. And then the cop says, I dispatched both of them, telling his partner after the fact. It's an outrage. These cops need to be arrested, handcuffed, put in the back of a whatever vehicle, and get the same exact treatment that we would get if we were to shoot at one of them. Are you kidding? If you had a weapon in your hand, the cops would kill you without even shooting it. These cops are murdering family members of people. They're murdering humans, and they're murdering dogs. I'm outraged, and it needs to stop right now. And these cops need to be tried, prosecuted, convicted, jailed, prisoned. That's what they need right now. Rick, your thoughts?
All right. I'm going to go for it. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, this is no laughing matter because this is very serious. I even read another article this morning about 2 people in a nightclub. They were at some party. I think it might have even been in like a swingers party or something like that where they got shot in the back. And I think there was like a toy gun there. So, I didn't get all the story, but people got shot. And I got to say a little disclaimer, because my brother's an ex-cop. He's retired. I'll tell you something. It's a tough job. And these people, there's so many druggies out there. There's so many wackos out there. Things are getting worse and worse because of all the desperation from our economy. And what's happening, I'll guarantee this is actually accurate. The fascist system, the people at the top are giving law enforcement certain rights to do certain things so they can protect the elite people, and the elite are afraid of the situation. But let me talk about ideas and solutions for a minute, because this article that you're referring to, and I want to mention one other thing after this 2 minutes, but the author really had some good ideas. One was to invoke the 10th Amendment and don't allow feds training. I think this is such a great idea and so important. All training and all situations, obligations, resistance should be discussed by each community. The second thing is no military weapons to any of the state or city police, okay? The feds shouldn't be creating this police state to create an intimidation. That creates an authoritarian, a dictatorship, a totalitarian, communist, socialist type government. We don't want to go there, obviously. Next, this author said we should establish a citizen review board which has authority over police brutality and certain behaviors. This is right on. I think we all need to start getting involved. That's why you always hear me folks saying reading, research, and share information. We need to ask questions. We need to say it like it is. We need to talk about truth, because that's what standing for principle is. The same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, truth. And if someone does it because of what group identity politics are doing, that means we should do it too. We don't even have a rule of law in this country. And this is why police should wear cameras. And I know a lot of cops personally who like wearing cameras because it protects them from certain accusations from the public. So I think if those 4 rules were invoked all around the nation and then tailored to different and tweaked to certain districts and states and counties, depending on what the people say, I think we'd hit a home run, because that's how you get the people involved. Now, regarding the Australian woman who got shot, also I believe it was in Minneapolis, or at least Minnesota. I remember reading that that particular cop was a diversity hire. And see, this goes back to what I'm saying all the time. When you create a separate tiered system of rules, laws, and accountability based on group identity politics, and you lower the bars and standards and expectations, and you degrade and disrespect and insult all these people shoved into these groups because you say they can't compete, their work is suboptimal. You don't empower a nation. You don't empower a group. You don't empower an individual by lowering the bars of standards and expectation. And then the victim groups are bullies at the same time, protected by the elites. This is all meant to make us submissive and break our will. And that's why they use these politically correct buzzwords that have been hijacked by a definition like racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? We can't allow individuals to be demonized, discredited, and delegitimized because they speak truth and they speak up, because that's what the law says. That's our Constitution. Our Bill of Rights and our Constitution, especially the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, talks about protecting ourselves and having free speech. That's what America was built on. So when we keep lowering the bars of standards and expectations, folks, we're destroying America from within, because we are rewarding mediocrity based on what group we're in. Okay, this is, again, insulting, degrading, and disrespecting. And this is done by design. So we have infighting, and so we have chaos, because the divide and conquer strategy does not work unless you lower the bars of standards and expectations. So when you destroy ingenuity, productivity, innovation, communication, accountability, and you have no laws, what do you expect? This. And this is why we all have to get involved. We have to speak, we have to read, we have to research, we have to ask questions, and we have to share information with our fellow Americans. When we stop being Americans first, and we're identified by what group we are in, whether it be aristocracy, skin pigmentation, gender, religion, ideology, or even generation. We are destroying our own country because we're letting the five companies that control the mainstream media to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, ideology, and sway public opinion by holding on to the narrative, means, talking points, and microphones. We got to stop asking, what are they going to do? We got to stop telling the elite, what are we going to do? And that's why we have to communicate. Vince?
I was reading an article by Dave Hodges, another USA prepares instructor and broadcaster. And it's in beforeitsnews.com. He says, since 9/11, the subsequent militarization of the police by the Department of Homeland Security, about 5,000 Americans have been killed by U.S. police officers. The civilian death rate is nearly equal to the number of U.S. soldiers killed in Iraq. In fact, you are 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than by a terrorist. Now, this is in the article that is about this Australian lady, and she was executed by a Minneapolis police officer. She called 911 to report a crime, and as she approached the police vehicle, she says, "I'm the one that called you," and then she was promptly shot by the cop, who is in the passenger seat of a police car. So he's in his car, she's outside the car. She says, "I'm the one that called you," and he shoots her through the door. So here it's really tough to say, well, I think she had a knife and she was charging. No, that's not going to work because he was in the car. I think she had a weapon. He was in his car. He shot her through the door. So from Fox News, it says an Australian woman engaged to marry an American next month was shot and killed by a Minneapolis cop after calling the police to report an incident, leading her family and investigators to question what caused the deadly shooting. The woman, identified as Justine Damon, 40 years old, was killed in a late-night shooting in the city's Fulton neighborhood. Okay? She reportedly called to report an assault and got killed by the cops, or a cop. So I read the story about this cop, and he says, hey, listen, please respect my privacy. Really? This cop should have been arrested. By whom? His partner. When? Right then and there. When he drew his weapon and shot and killed this 40-year-old woman who reported what she thought was a crime, his partner should have arrested the cop for murder. Should have arrested him right then and there. Should have taken his service weapon out of his holster, pointed it right at the cop's head and said, hands up. Hands up, you're under arrest for murder. Did he do it? I don't think so. I have not read anything that says that he did that. That's what should have happened. He should have been arrested for murder by his patrol officer, partner, and cop. That's what should happen. But, I keep hearing the stories, hey, there are wonderful cops, 95% of cops are great. Really? I don't believe it. Why? Because what I just mentioned about the cop who just murdered this 40-year-old woman didn't get arrested. I want to see some good cops. I really like to see some. Show me one. Show me one. I keep hearing that there are good cops everywhere. Really? Show me one. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. Hey, Rich, we were talking about federal training of cops. There's also corporate involvement. Here's what's happened. My research has told me that Taser company, Taser International, has hired ex-police chiefs as consultants. And what they do is they go around the country and they talk with other police chiefs. And they say, look, we can help you. We can help you write policy. And the policy will help keep everybody safe. Because, you don't want your officers getting shot. So here's what we do. We change the level. So instead of, using fists, instead of using the batons, instead of using pepper spray, we're going to help you so that keep your officers at a distance. So what they do is they rewrite the policy of the sheriff's office, and they say, here's the procedure. So when you hear the cops say, well, it's policy, what's happened is the consultants have come in and said, we're going to rewrite the policy so that, first we talk to you, then we use a taser. Now, why would they do that? Why would they use a taser right away rather than say, look, maybe raise their voice or something? Well, the reason is because the cartridges that when you squeeze the trigger on these tasers, it's a $35 cartridge or more. So here all over the country, we've got these cops shooting these tasers at $35 plus per cartridge, and who gets the business? Well, Taser International. What a great way to go. And what about these body cameras? Well, where is all that data stored? Taser International has a solution. So Taser International is interested in tasing and body cameras because they get to charge the sheriff's offices and the police departments for the storage of all this data. So it's big business, big business. So I just wanted to share that with our class. But I got to tell you, I called our sheriff after one of his deputies was riding around our farm around midnight one night, just poking around, snooping on our farm, and we had nothing to do with any of this. He just shows up and rides around our farm. I called our sheriff the next day and told him, do not come on our property. Do not trespass. You're not welcome on our property. Do not show up on our property. I told our sheriff on the phone. Actually, it was on a Monday morning at the bottom of the hour break. I called him up while I was on the air. Commercials were running, and I'd let him know he's not welcome on our property. And he said, Vincent, some people really want us to be on their property. I said, not me. Not me. Don't come on our property. Rich Scheben?
Well, I totally agree. If you ask a cop to patrol your property for whatever reason, maybe someone's stealing cattle or something, I can see how some ranchers might specifically ask for them. But if you're not, that is trespassing, and there should be consequences, absolutely. And as far as what you mentioned regarding the databases on trail cameras and the tasers and the $35, you always got to follow the money, because that's what fascism is, and not just in this country, but in the Western world and the world itself, because the big corporate oligarchies don't have the same accountability, the same rules, the same laws. And maybe all those trail cams that people should get together, have these meetings. And remember, one of the conclusions was to establish a citizen review board, which will have authority over police brutality and behaviors. Mm-hmm. Maybe that database of those cameras should go to the citizen review board and be stored in other databases for different purposes. So we need to go back to accountability. They say accountability, they say transparency, they say equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity. These are all, again, politically correct buzzwords that have been changed by definition, hijacked by definition, to use as a tool to divide the American people. And unless we get together, we can blame the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, the central banks, the Soroses, the Russians, the mainstream media, the neocons, the socialists, the Zionists, the elites, the aristocracy, all we want, the deep state. But unless the silent majority wakes up, we are the ones to blame. 90% of us are to blame because we're not speaking up. Vince?
Yeah, never re-elect anyone, class. Never re-elect anyone. And never call 911. Because guys with guns are going to show up, and they're anxious. They're anxious to squeeze that trigger. I'm not kidding. It's all over America. It's out of control. It's out of control. Never call 911. Never re-elect anyone. Rich Scheben, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Vince.
Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.